In a previous video, we have already learned about water and its important hydrogen bonding properties. Let's take a minute to review what that is. Now, water is a molecule made up of one oxygen bonded to two hydrogen atoms. Those atoms are held together by covalent bonds, but the covalent bonds are polar because oxygen is a very electronegative atom and pulls those shared electrons closer towards itself, further away from the hydrogen atoms, resulting in partial charges on the water molecule. The oxygen end of each water molecule has a partial negative charge, and the hydrogen ends of the water molecule have partial positive charges. We say then that water is a polar molecule. Now, if we have a bunch of water molecules, all with opposite charges on their ends, and we put them all together in a container or in an area, they are going to attract to each other. That is because even though these charges are partial, they still attract to each other. So as you can see here, we have a couple water molecules that are hydrogen bonding to each other. So for example, the partial negative end on this water molecule is attracting to the partial positive end on this water molecule. That temporary attraction is called a hydrogen bond. Now, these hydrogen bonds are weak. They are not a constant force. They form, break, reform, all as these water molecules are moving around. Now, the reason that we're spending so much time talking about water's polarity and its hydrogen bonding is because that leads to the four important properties of water. And water is essential to life on Earth for these four reasons. It has cohesive and adhesive behavior. You can kind of think of that as water being sticky. It has the ability to moderate temperature. It expands upon freezing, and it is a solvent, and it's versatile as a solvent. We are going to take some time to go through each of those four unique properties. The first property, water's cohesive and adhesive behavior. Cohesion means water molecules attracting to other water molecules, or water sticking to water. That is the result of hydrogen bonding. Adhesion is water molecules sticking to other substances. Think of an adhesive. You're sticking two different things together. So cohesion, water to itself. Adhesion, water to something else. Now, the reason that this property is so important, and we're going to study this later on in AP, those two properties, water being sticky, allows it to move up against gravity through plants, whether they are small, short plants like grasses or tall, large trees. Water is able to stick to itself, so it kind of forms this chain or rope of water, and it also sticks to other substances like the inside water conducting cells called xylem, the tubes of different plants. So the first property of water is sticky. And why it is important to living things, one example is it allows water to move up through plants. Another example of water being sticky is this idea of surface tension. Imagine all of these water molecules on the surface of water. Because they don't have any water molecules above them, they are extremely sticky to one another, so they kind of form this film on top of water. We call this water surface tension, and it does have a pretty high surface tension. Although this isn't like something super important, it is kind of a neat factor because it allows organisms like this insect, this water walker, to be able to use that property to move across the surface of water. So that's our first important emergent property, cohesive and adhesive behavior. The second property of water is that water has the ability to moderate temperature, and this goes back to a property called specific heat. High specific heat, all that is, if we take a look at a definition, specific heat is the amount of energy, the amount of heat needed to change the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. So it's basically how much energy it takes for water to absorb to heat up 1 degree Celsius, or how much heat needs to be lost in order for water to change temperature and decrease by 1 degree Celsius. Now, that heat, that energy, When we say it's changing the temperature of water, we're talking about that heat going in and breaking hydrogen bonds. So when you are boiling water on the stove, all of that heat that you are putting into that water is actually going into breaking the hydrogen bonds that are holding the water molecules together, giving the water molecules enough kinetic energy so that they may leave that liquid and become a gas. Now, the opposite is true when we're cooling water down, when we're trying to freeze water. Heat is being released, so the water molecules slow down, they have less kinetic energy, and those hydrogen bonds are able to form back up again. As far as a substance, water has an extremely high specific heat compared to other substances, and that minimizes temperature fluctuations on the globe and as well as in individual organisms. So if we're talking globally, approximately 70 to 75% of the globe is covered with water. And every day we have mass quantities of energy coming into the globe, into the earth from the sun. Water in lakes and ponds and oceans is absorbing all of that energy, and our global temperature stays fairly stable throughout the day and throughout the year. And that's because the majority of that energy that's coming in from the sun is being absorbed by those bodies of water. So that's what we mean by the high specific heat minimizes temperature fluctuations. That would be an example globally. So the Earth's temperature stays fairly constant. Now, individual organisms, we can take a look at evaporative cooling. This is just taking a look at how liquid water gets converted into a gas. So we're talking about evaporation or vaporization. And as water leaves, as any liquid leaves, the remaining surface cools. This is called evaporative cooling. In humans, we know this more as sweat. So evaporative cooling helps stabilize temperatures in organisms because as those heated up molecules, as those molecules with more kinetic energy leave a surface, they take some of the heat with it, cooling that particular surface. So we call that evaporative cooling. And again, that goes along with the second property of water, which is water's ability to moderate temperature. So those are your first two properties. I'm going to pause the video there, and we will finish up the second video by looking at the last two properties.